Good morning. Milford's message. Good morning, fellow monarchs. Yeah, well, I guess here we are. Joe's here. G'day, Joe. Oh, I remember where you popped up this week. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I am in Gold Coast weather, tired today. We're going to talk a lot about data and AI and things like this today because we have got somewhat carried away. When I say we, I got carried away. And then Stefan saw that, got carried away. And then I woke up this morning to a massive thread between Stefan and Scott getting very, very carried away. Here's Stefan here. That was quite funny, mate, to get up. We have a group thread going between the three of us and get up, and my phone is just like 100 plus messages on, on the thread with the three of us. We'll talk about that in a moment. Speaking of data, and since I'm in workout mode, something I've found really, really interesting. Since we got back from a month of travel in January, I've been really focused on like routine and consistency. And because I got the watch and it tracks everything, I've gone into ChatGPT. I started a thread that was like a fitness optimization plan. Not anything radical, but like how do I make sure I have a bit more energy and I get more out of the exercises and things I do, and I eat stuff at the right time and sleep and everything. I've been getting all these little tweaks. And because we're all data people, my cardio fitness has really, really improved. So my VO2 max has gone up, you can sort of see on the graph, gone up a lot just towards really since January, especially over the month of February and into March. And I'm not entirely sure why. But now, where is it now? It's just about to go into the high range, which is good. I'm very happy with that. And I think a lot of it is getting good sleep and having consistency. So measuring all the things I think is very, very interesting. Measure more stuff. Let's see. Mount Evil Cougar, g'day, good morning. Aaron, Westlife has gotten back together. That's just terrible. I would have had a shower and been presentable and worn something better, but as you will notice, it is already 9:15 here, which means for Stefan and the UTCs is 11:15 p.m. But I went to a birthday party last night, had a late sleep in, and then I broke code, which Stefan needed to help me fix, and now here we are. So yeah, as Stefan says, can't argue with the data. J759 is in the US, much better time in the US, according to my TV. 4:17 PST, 7:17 EST. Is EST, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, so, I know, just mess with me. Thank you. It's fun. I'm Australian. We all mess with each other. There's no problem. Vancouver. Mike is in Vancouver. Haven't been to Vancouver for a while after a week of rain. This is what I remember about Vancouver. It always rained. So there we go. Let me jump into stuff because there's a number of interesting things today. I'm going to talk about a couple of data breaches and then just try to talk about PwnedClaw without being too hyperbolic because it has been a bit mind-blowing, if I'm honest. It's kind of nuts. So let's talk about data breaches. Where's my list? Baydöner. Now, both the data breaches today have interesting angles for different reasons. They're not the normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill breaches. Baydöner, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong because the O's got two dots on top and it's Turkish. But bear with me, we'll call it Baydöner. What do they actually do? They're like a restaurant chain in Turkey. So let's talk about what happened with these guys because I think it's kind of interesting. If I go to the Twitters, still call it that? Yeah, it's fine. Go to have I been pwned here. It's not that it was particularly interesting in any way, except for when it became a bit interesting. So, actually, there's another breach in here as well. Divine Skins. That doesn't matter too much. There's a little one. Baydöner was interesting. Turkish restaurant chain, 1.2 million unique email addresses. Data also included name, phone number, city, and plain text password. It is the year 2026, and they had plain text passwords in their breach. But here's what made it interesting. So we'll see if this is still doing this as well. That might be interesting. One of the things I do when I load a data breach is I get a logo, and that logo is going to appear on the Have I Been Pwned website and appears in the Open Graph image that appears on social media as well. So I want a logo that's kind of fairly tight and concise. So for example, when I loaded the Aura Beach, which we'll talk about next, Aura, their logo is the word Aura, but it is also, they just use the A with a little symbol over it. Or like Have I Been Pwned, it's like we have a logo that has the whole thing there, but it's also represented just as the little SQL injection pattern as well. So what I do normally in order to find the logo is I go to the website, I go to the source code, HTML source, and I search for the Apple Touch icon, because the Apple Touch icon is normally pretty good. If not the Apple Touch icon, and I look for the fav icon. So I've gone to the source code of Baydöner.com, looked at it, and let me just put this tweet in here, because then you'll see what I'm talking about, and you'll see if you have the same reaction. Looked at the source code, and there is ASCII art, literally from line 2, so right at the top, which spells out woohoo. It's woohoo, all in hashes, ASCII art. And that's all that's there. I don't know if it's still the same. I'll explain why in a moment, and then we'll check. I saw that and went, this is interesting. In fact, I literally tweeted, not often you see plain text passwords these days. I quote tweeted the Have I Been Pwned one. The source code of Baydöner is interesting too, and just like a shrug emoji. And to me, interesting meant multiple things. First of all, why is it there? Under the best of times, even no data breach, why put woohoo like in the source code of your page? I found that strange. Secondly, they've just had a data breach and there was no indication that it was specifically data from that website, but it is a breach of that company. It is not at all uncommon for data breaches to also include defacements of one kind or another. And both of those things, to use my term, made it interesting. So I tweeted that. When did I do that? 1:54 p.m. on March 15. And I just didn't pay too much attention after that. So that would be 6 days ago. And I wake up the next morning and I had multiple messages from people in Turkey who were unhappy, which I didn't expect. Normally, I expect an unhappy message from someone who's just like, you've just loaded our data. And I was like, well, this is the way data breaches work. But these messages were from people that work for a company called Woohoo. And Woohoo is apparently the current developer of the website. And they felt that by me posting that, it implied that their company was responsible for the data breach. And I'll read you a couple of messages here. This person says, the ASCII in the source code is just a small signature we use. Smiley face, all good. I'm managing partner at Woohoo Digital, the team behind the site. The Baydöner data breach did not occur here. It happened on a separate online ordering system run by another provider, clarifying the misunderstanding. Now I read that and I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. Someone else, and I don't know if this is just a cultural thing, but someone else from the same company gave a response that was much less nice. Now, where is it? I'm actually not seeing it here. I wonder if they removed it. Maybe they removed it. But it was basically, it was just blunt. And now I can't see it. But separately to that, well, actually, I think what I did is I went back, what did I say this? Here, I quoted that, said apparently Woohoo refers to the company and is unrelated to a breach. Perhaps a link to the company in the ASCII art would help avoid any confusion as to its origin. So this was my suggestion. We're going to see in a moment if they've done it or not. So it was, I think, I see their point, but I don't think they should have been upset. But here's the one that really, I don't care that much. It's fucking dumb. Woohoo Digital, drop this into the chat, then went and said, they put out a tweet here. It's a big red image that says public announcement in it. The data breach referred to in Baydöner's KVKK notice is not related to the corporate website of Baydöner developed by us. The incident originated from a separate ordering system operated by another contractor. Now, they could have stopped there and it would have been very reasonable. But then they said, we reserve our legal rights against misinformation. That's just dumb. That is outright unnecessary and dumb. That's my view on that. Now, let's actually see, did they put in clarification, like a URL, in their frankly kind of tacky ASCII art? Control U, view. Oh, it's just gone. Ah, very good. All right. So now, view source of, just literally copy and paste this link in here. They have removed the ASCII art. So I feel vindicated by that. If we view source there is no remaining ASCII art. So, yep, I suspect that they have also formed the conclusion that maybe that was a bit tacky. The thing, I have no problem with people attributing work to the developers or to the digital agency or whatever, but maybe do it in a way that makes it clear that it is attributed to the digital agency. You're trying to put little, I don't know, what do we call it, fingerprints like that over it is just a bit weird. Anywho, let's read the comments. Aaron says, I have a question. If you wanted to buy something from a website, but it was clearly quite amateur, poorly designed WordPress on shared hosting, would you give them your personal info credit card? Depends how much I want to buy the thing. So here's my counter argument to that. Look at the names on Have I Been Pwned, how big the names on Have I Been Pwned are. Would you trust Adobe? Would you trust LinkedIn? Would you trust Dropbox? You know, these massive, massive names. Ashley Madison. And you'd go, yeah, well, you know, they seem like the sort of company that's going to handle my data well. And now here we are. So that's one thing. The other thing is, as it relates to credit cards, for a website to process your credit card, they have to adhere to some pretty strict standards set by the payment card industry. That means they either need to implement very strong controls on their own websites, or they need to link off to places like Stripe, like what we do, and delegate it all to them. The handling of payment card data is very heavily regulated, and if you don't do it right, you don't get to take payments. And then the other thing is, if someone does get your credit card, which has happened to me on many different occasions, I've got a blog post about this actually. Troy Hunt, all they took is credit card or something like that. Good news, your credit card is fine and only your irreplaceable things were hacked. When did I write that? 2015. Yes, more than a decade ago. Drop that in the chat. When your credit card gets defrauded, now remember, there's a credit card, debit card is different. Credit card gets defrauded, generally speaking, you get all your money back, you have to change some direct debits, and you get a new card sent in the mail a few days later. Like it's very, very low impact having your credit card taken. In my experience, all the time it's happened to me, all the time it's happened to Charlotte. What is not as easily replaceable, which is the point of this blog post, is when it's your password and you've reused it all over the place, or it's your PII and other personal info that you can't just replace. That's much more impactful. Matt says, not much of a defacement. Sounds like something the junior developer who maintains the CMS would do if they were feeling silly. That's exactly what it feels like, Matt. It feels like a silly junior developer, and they have now realized the error of their ways. J759 says, never use a debit card if you can help it. Yeah, or use a debit card without much money on it. And then your risk is limited unless you put more money on it later on. And then you have a problem then. But yeah, debit cards are a worry. Okay, that was Baydöner. Now, the next one, Aura. So, when I saw this appear and someone reached out to me and said, here is the Aura data, this was an awkward moment because Aura is a partner of ours on Have I Been Pwned. Now, where do we even begin with this? Let's begin with the empirical stuff. Someone reached out and says, here's an Aura data breach. I look at it. It smells like an Aura data breach. It's not a data breach where you can just go to the website and enumerate email addresses and validate that, yes, those email addresses do have accounts. But it smelled right. And what I mean by that is there's lots of Aura references or lots of Aura people in there. There are documents and things in there as well related to Aura. It would have been a very hard one to fabricate in that way. So at this point, it's legit. So I got to reach out to people at Aura. And the problem here is that They're a partner. They do identity protection stuff. They're a partner. In fact, they're one of the reasons we have the partnership, because they were very, very enthusiastic about having a partnership with us for a long time. So we set up this model. They're a partner. They do identity protection. They've got product placement on Have I Been Pwned to help people protect their identities. And then they've just had a bunch of their data leaked. Now, also, as I'm explaining this, if there's anyone on this, and the person who I'm talking about will know who it is, if there's anyone on this live stream now that wants to comment on the Aura data breach about their personal experience with it, then feel free to chime in and share whatever you're willing to share about how your data got there, because I think it's kind of interesting. So they're there on Have I Been Pwned to help people protect their identities, and they've just had a breach that's got over 900,000 email addresses in it. Now, there's several things here. Lots of issues here. Number one, they were always going to go into Have I Been Pwned. There was never going to be a point where it's like, they give us money, so we're not going to put them in. Like, it just never, under any circumstances, was that not going to happen. I think the only circumstance that would happen, or that would cause that, if it was something like a Qantas situation where it's like, well, there's actually a court injunction and we just legally can't even touch it. But they were never going to lean on us, and they never tried to either, just to be clear. They never tried to. And I had many text messages and phone conversations with them over the course of the couple of days between discovering it and getting it in a Have I Been Pwned. That was number one. Number two, I was always going to push them to do the right thing in terms of disclosure. There was never any question about that. And the right thing, as I've said a gazillion times over 12 years, only 13 years now, is to make a public statement, explain what's happened, when you learned about it, what you've done about it, what you're going to do about it, and contact the people in the breach. All of those things were absolutely immutable. Okay, so Joe's commented. Sorry, I did want to just show you one of those. Joe's in there. Joe says, I'm in the breach. Have no idea how they got my data, other than a vague reference to a network hardware supplier I used about 12 to 15 years ago. I'll finish this story, then we'll come back to Joe. So I was always going to push them in that direction, because that's what I do with every single company that's in there. It doesn't matter whether they give us money or they don't give us money, whether they're in Australia or anywhere else in the world. It's always disclose, do it early, be transparent, and notify everyone who's in there. So the challenge with any company that's had a data breach is, this sounds easy to us. It's like, hey, you just like grep the email addresses out and then just send everyone an email and let them know, and then just put a statement about what happened. But I'm going to like not specifically speak about Aura when I describe this, because not to not throw them under the bus or anything like that, but this is just what happens with every company. Dealing with stuff like this has got a lot of moving parts. There's been a criminal act, so there's usually law enforcement involved. There's lawyers all over it, because you now need to make statements as a company, and you might face things like class actions, which pop up very, very quickly after every data breach. You're wanting to figure out exactly what went wrong, how this all happened. You're wanting to make sure that there's no remaining risk to the organization or to customers. You've got me there pushing you to do disclosure, because I'm going to put it in Have I Been Pwned, and then people are going to know about it. So the clock's ticking there. But even just the ability for many organizations to email everybody and tell them there'd been a data breach. I mean, look, this was only 900,000 people, but what happens when it's like 10 million or 100 million people? Can an organization literally turn around tomorrow and send 100 million emails? Like, it's a hard problem. Now, this is also part of the Shiny Hunters. I need to refresh the dark web website today and actually see what's in there. Shiny Hunters data breaches. So Shiny Hunters has been notorious for many different data breaches. CarGuru, Crunchbase, SoundCloud. They've had loads and loads of stuff. More is coming. I'm going to have a look on the dark web website and see what is in there at the moment. Their MO is grabbing data by socially engineering operators, usually by voice, doing the vishing, the voice phishing, gaining access to Salesforce instances, sucking data out, ransoming the company, posting the data publicly when the ransom isn't paid. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. Now, I have not been told any of the details from Aura around discussions they may or may not have had with the ransomware crew, but what they clearly, the MO of this company is give us money or we dump your data. On that basis, I would assume that Aura hasn't given them any money, which I'm supportive of. Let me just log into their absolutely terrible captcha on this Tor site, because they had something else. What bloody letter is that? It is an absolutely terrible captcha. I know why people have these, but oh God, it's painful. I think I got that right. So they had another company they just listed yesterday. Berkadia Commercial Mortgage LLC, over 5 million Salesforce records. Final warning, they need to pay by the 22nd, which is probably 2 days if you work on American time from now. So they've got Aura Group up here. Over 900,000 records containing PII and other internal corporate data have been compromised. The company failed to reach an agreement with us despite all the chances and offers we made them. They don't care. I'm sure these guys realize, but unanimously, the advice from law enforcement agencies and governments is not to pay the ransom. So when you say they don't care, they are literally following what is considered the industry best practice, which would suggest that they do care. And look, I know that Aura absolutely cares, and I'm not saying that, again, because they pay us money, but I'm saying that because I talk to people there, and I have been talking to people there over the days since this data was posted, and they do care. It's a very, very stressful situation for them. So moving on with Aura. Now, part of the problem with Aura is that, and they've said this in their public disclosure statement, the data that was in there was a combination of their customers, and I think they've said something like 20,000 current customers and 15,000. Let's actually check the stats. We've got to get everything right when we talk about these things. I'll go to have a been pwned disclosure or have a been pwned account here, link through to Aura and their disclosure notice. They've actually updated this, which is good. I hadn't noticed that 2 days ago. As our investigation of security incident has progressed, we can confirm that no database supporting the Aura identity theft protection application was accessed in any way, which is consistent with the MO of these guys. Like if you've got access to a Salesforce instance, you're not going to have access to the backend database with the passwords and other things in it. No sensitive information provided by customers to Aura for monitoring purposes, such as social security numbers, financial information, credit cards, or passwords compromised. That's consistent with what else are in the data. Gee, they've written a good disclosure notice. I wonder how that happened. The consumer information accessed by an unauthorized third party originated from marketing lists. Aura's analysis determined the records contained personal information. Aura's analysis determined the records containing personal information came almost exclusively from a contact list from a company that Aura acquired 5 years ago, and that's how Joe got in there. So let's talk about that piece. They've got, as I said down here, less than 20,000 active Aura customers, and I think I've seen press that said about 15,000 inactive ones. So if you've got 35,000, where does 900,000 come from? Well, it comes from the marketing list. So Aura acquired a company, I'm not sure which one. I think I saw a reference somewhere publicly, but I can't remember the name of it. That company had data, and there was a marketing list. I mean, this is what companies do. They market to people. We all get marketing emails from these companies, and I suspect Joe got some marketing email from there as well. Now, Joe was in there. We had a look at Joe's data just to get a concept of what was there. I don't think, Joe, you had any other PII, did you? It was really just like your email address and an obscure reference to a particular network hardware company. Joe says here, I wasn't notified by Aura, only HIBP. Their notifications only appear to be going to a small subset of the corpus they defined as their customers. Now, this is a point that I make to companies, I made to Aura. I've said, you should contact everyone who has had their data in there. You will find, and I don't know what they've decided to do here in all honesty, you will find that many organizations, when they talk about notifications, and I think that they might have said something to this effect here. Let's just see if I can find their wording. We're in the process of notifying impacted customers as appropriate. And you'll find many companies will have a statement to the effect of, we will notify impacted individuals where legally required, or something to that effect. the wording leaves a gap that allows a company not to contact people like Joe. Now, I don't agree with that, and I have told them in advance I don't agree with not notifying people whose data is in there. I can see the way companies reconcile that in their minds. So, for example, and I've written about this. What do I call it? The data breach paradox. Troy Hunt, data breach paradox, disclosure, data breach disclosure conundrum. Did I call it conundrum? Conundrum. Data breach disclosure conundrum. There we go. I'll drop that in there. And I sent this to them as well. Our privacy regulations, depending on where you are in the world, all pretty consistently have carve-outs that only require notifications to individuals where it's likely to cause impact or likely to cause serious harm or impact on the rights and freedoms, is the GDPR terminology that's used, which means that people like Joe or people like me in many data breaches that I've been in and haven't been notified fall through the cracks. I don't agree with that approach. That's my 2 cents on that. Now, as it relates to having Aura remain as a partner into the future, there's a couple of things on this. So number one, if we ever felt that any partner deviated from the values that are important to us, deviated far enough from the values, sometimes there's grey, we drop them, like absolutely in a heartbeat. There is no amount of money that, let's say, for the sake of argument, let's say Aura just tried to cover the whole thing up. That's it. That'd be gone. You cannot sit there on Have I Been Pwned and talk about privacy and online safety and then do completely the opposite. So we would drop them in a heartbeat. The decision at the moment is to wait and see how their disclosure goes, how it's perceived by the public, and frankly, to see if there's any pushback. Now, so far I've had one email from someone who was like, it's a bit ironic to see literally be on the Aura data. Incidentally, they're only shown to people in the US, so they only service the US market. So a lot of people here, they wouldn't see Aura pop up anywhere anyway. But this person was like, it's a bit ironic to like be on the Aura data breach page and then see an ad for Aura, identity protection stuff. And it's very ironic. So we are seeing how the temperature out there is before making any decisions on that. But yeah, it was worse for them, of course, having to deal with all this. Let's look at the comments. Yeah, so Joe, do keep in touch with me about that. I'd like to know how that goes. J757 appreciates the transparency. I'm nothing if not transparent and direct. Yep. Thank you, Joe. Troy's been clear and up front. Milford says, Troy, do you reset database email results? I'm in less breaches now than I was in 2017. No, we do not reset data breach results. The only way that should be able to happen is if you opted out, in which case you wouldn't be able to see any. So no. The only exception to that would be something like Ticketek, where we retired the breach. But there are two retired breaches, Ticketek and CloudPets. No, not CloudPets. Ticketek and VTech, different toy maker. Joe says, Aura's statement was clearly, understandably written by lawyers. Yes. And yes, laughy face, cry face as well. Like this, every one of these is written by lawyers. I hate that we're in this situation, but again, like and speaking more generally, because there's nothing I saw in Aura that isn't consistent with what we always see in terms of things like, they're going to be worried about getting sued. They're going to be worried about class actions. They're going to be their number one priority. They won't say this publicly. No company ever does, but every company's number one priority is shareholder value. That is the number one thing. And every time they say our priority is our customers, is not the case. It's just not. They need the customers to be happy because that's good for shareholder value, but their accountability is to their board, is to their shareholders, and particularly publicly listed companies, that is their responsibility. Or, as far as I know, is not public or owned by any public entity. I'm not even sure where their funding is. Yeah, but lawyers are there to try and save the company getting sued into oblivion. And unfortunately, what that means is things like disclosure statements get delayed because everything's got to be run through lawyers. They've got to make sure that it's consistent with what's actually happened, number one, because if they get pulled up before a judge at some point in time, they can't be making false statements. They've got to not say things that could make it worse for them later on. They've got to keep in mind all the different privacy regulations around the world. I mean, here's a really interesting thing. They build a product that is only available to the US market, but Joe's in the UK, which puts him under UK GDPR. Has anyone seen Ofcom and the 4chan stuff? That is entertaining reading. We'll come back to that maybe later. So it's just a messy situation. It's messy. What's the other comments in here? Written by lawyers. Yeah, Stebbits, thank you for replying to Milford on that. Sounds support to you if there's anything too weird. It's a massive difference. I'm not one of your customers though, mate. Long time fan. Yeah, but I don't care if you're one of our customers. If something is possibly broken, like just send it or DM Stefan. Marek says HWP should start offering data breach response consulting services. We kind of do for free. Like if I disclose something to a company, there are many occasions where I have lots of phone calls. And even talking to Aura the other day, it's like, I know this is your first rodeo, but I've literally done this about 1,000 times now. So yeah, and they were very receptive to my advice too. I'll give them credit for that. I'm too busy for that. JMR, it's not a breach until the lawyers say so. Yeah, I know. Beam Mad 2032. G'day, Troy. No real question. Just appreciate your content for years now. Oh, cool. Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Now, since Joe's mentioning Ofcom's attempt to find 4chan is laughably unfortunate, I avoid making these comments online because I don't particularly want to put a big target on our head either. But if you haven't been following what's been happening here, Ofcom in the UK, the UK's Office of Communications, has the UK in general has set a whole, and Joe, tell me if I get this wrong here, but has set a lot of requirements around age verification for access to certain content. And yeah, this is happening all around the world at the moment. I have been told that in Australia you can't see Pornhub anymore, or you can't see the naughty stuff on Pornhub. I've been told, and that has just happened because Australia set an 18-year-old age gate. And obviously that's the biggest player in the industry, and they're the ones who have to sort of lead by example, and all the smaller, sleazier stuff, I've been told, is still okay. So Ofcom has asked 4chan to age gate their content. 4chan is a US service. 4chan has said, no, we won't do that because we're American. And you can't tell us what we can and can't say. And Americans get very uppity about their free speech. Sorry to the Americans here, but you do get very, very uppity about the free speech stuff. But I also agree, and this is the bit I don't want to get into on the public timeline on Twitter because people get very upset about it. But the premise that you have a service operating in a part of the world, and as we've seen from the 4chan lawyer who's been posting a lot of stuff, it's like we're an American company with American servers running in America under American law. You can't be over there across the pond and go, you need to curtail your content and limit our free speech. And I agree with that. And the reason why I don't want to get onto that online is the last thing I need is a whole bunch of people in Europe saying you need to follow all of our GDPR laws because, which we do anyway, but this whole premise of you can be in another part of the world and just by virtue of the internet being a global network, there's a site somewhere else in the world and you need to start following all our laws. So they've basically just been sending back hamster memes to Ofcom. And Ofcom has now fined them, I think, £450,000. Let's find the Ofcom tweet because it is a entertaining thing to watch, if I'm honest. Where's Ofcom? Here we go. Oh no. This is the guy, Preston Byrne. So he is the lawyer there for 4chan. We'll drop this tweet in the chat here. The UK censorship agency Ofcom issued 4chan with the giant fine today. We responded to Ofcom with the giant hamster today, which again is kind of entertaining to watch. And Ofcom is out there in the press saying, today we have fined 4chan £450,000. And people have quite rightly made the point. It's like, no, you've tried to. The challenge with any of these things is the enforceability. So you can sit there in the UK and go, I am going to send a £450,000 fine to an American company, but who's going to enforce that? Ofcom's not going to go to the US and put this through a US court because it's not a US law anyway. 4chan clearly doesn't have offices or presences or anything in the UK where they can impose penalties. So I don't know. We just keep watching, see what happens. JF759 says, we love us some free speech. So long as it's the free speech you agree with, not the free speech you don't agree with. That's the thing about free speech. It's all good and well until someone says something you don't like. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's the same problem. Someone here is getting 100 phishing emails a day. Does that mean I might be a recent data breach? It just might mean you're on the internet, to be honest. Who knows? I get them all the time too. Mike says, Ofcom are generally pretty, I thought you said petty, generally pretty competent, to be fair. I know a few folks there, and they really do have protecting the public at heart. And this is the thing, like I don't disagree that that government agencies are there primarily and genuinely there for the public interest. And I really dislike all of the hyperbole at the moment around things like, the age gating is just to try and get all your IDs, because it's almost like there's this image that there are people sitting there in these agencies who are just there to fuck with you. Like that's all they want to do, to make your life hard and to get into all your things. And these are normal, everyday people who put their pants on one leg at a time and go to the office and do something which, for many of them, and I think this is your point as well, Mike, with Ofcom, are there to try and make things better. So I don't think that their intentions are bad, but I think that this is just a very misplaced way of enforcement. And frankly, if you want to apply enforcement and do it within the jurisdiction that you can control, just start blocking 4chan nationally. Make all the ISPs responsible for blocking requests to 4chan. Kill the DNS queries, kill any TLS handshakes or anything to the domain. Like you can do that technically, and it's not going to work all the time because people VPN and do all sorts of things, and that is the nature of the internet. But this idea of trying to issue a fine because there's a website running in another country is just nuts. To extend that further, pick somewhere in the world that has a very different set of values to what we do in the Western world. Let's say it's China. If the Chinese government says we have some very invasive privacy law and everyone around the world needs to follow it, and England, if you don't follow it, we're going to send you a fine. Like, will we be okay with that? It's like, no, look, we wouldn't. I don't agree with a lot of the laws and positions in different parts of the world, but that's their own local prerogative. Trying to enforce it on other websites because they're on the internet, it just seems nuts to me. Milford, can you guys be quiet with the whole protect basic reputation thing already? The entire world's being equally threatened. We know the companies are not that bad. Yes, enough for the lawyers. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Joe Allen just twigged that Preston is 4chan's lawyer. Yeah, and he's very, very vocal. I think his profile from memory says tech and free speech lawyer. So he's obviously very, very pro free speech. I think it is funny replying with the hamster. Let's be honest. Let's see where it goes. She also says the vast majority of civil servants in the UK, I'm sure worldwide, are trying to do their best and good for the citizens, no doubt. And equally so, we see politicians say a bunch of dumb shit. Let's be honest. Some of them in some parts of the world more than others. You know who I mean. However, I genuinely don't think, at least not in our modern Western democratic societies, that those in charge are there with bad intentions. They might be values that don't necessarily align with everyone, but they did get elected, so obviously align with a lot of people. but they're not there to mess things up for us, and they even, yeah, anyway, let's not go into that. Let's talk about some fun stuff. OpenClaw. So that has got a lot of attention lately. It is, I think the stats are, the world's fastest growing open source project ever by a massive margin. It is all over the press. There are people who have no right to be talking about this stuff who are suddenly experts on OpenClaw things. I won't name a name here, but there's someone who's very very noteworthy in this part of the world for something completely different, who I'm just seeing endless videos from about OpenClaw, and I'm like, I'm confident you have no idea what you're talking about, but suddenly you are becoming an expert on this topic. You're seeing so much stuff on social about it having done amazing things, having done terrible things. You never know how much of this stuff to even believe. And I sort of got to the point recently where it's like, I'd actually really like to play with this, because there are things I think it could do that could be really useful for what we do at HOBP Central. And it is no way going to have any rights to anything that is at all important or sensitive. So I wonder how I could do this. So anyway, I went and bought a Mac Mini. So there is now a Mac Mini sitting down there. For those who are interested, it was just up from the base spec. Because I'm a I want to do it now kind of guy, I was like, okay, what spec can I buy that's going to arrive in the next day or two? So it was a pretty basic spec. It's a 0.5 terabyte disk. I think it was one with like 24 gig of RAM. It was about 50% more expensive than the most basic one. So about 1,500 Aussie dollars. So it arrived. I've set up OpenClaw on it. I've called it PwnedClaw because I've got these ideas of things I can do with it. And I'll talk to you about some of the stuff we're doing with it. And I went through the setup process. It's meant to be 3 minutes. It took me about 3 hours. And I had similar problems to what Scott had. So Scott set up overnight. And this is what I woke up to this morning, this massive discussion between Scott and Stefan, which was kind of funny, actually, because Stefan had already set up OpenClaw. I think you were running on a Raspberry Pi from memory, Stefan. Scott got a Mac Mini, and we ended up with Stefan's OpenClaw trying to troubleshoot Scott's OpenClaw. And it was a very amusing thread to read. Scott had similar problems for some things. We both had the same problem where you're setting up this Agentic AI that runs on a device here. It still needs to delegate to an AI service such as Claude, or you can use OpenAI, whatever you want. And in both our cases, we bought some Claude credits, and it kept saying there were no credits. So we had to roll keys and things like that, and then suddenly it started working. So it took me longer than what it should have to get working. Now that it's working, it is kind of fascinating. So I set it up with some very basic skills. I'm using Telegram to communicate with. I set up a Telegram bot. So effectively what we end up with is there's a Telegram bot, which I can communicate with directly via my normal first-person Telegram account. That Telegram bot is then monitored by the OpenClaw instance, which runs on my Mac Mini over here. It has its very own Claude account, brand new account, no history, nothing else connected to it, so no risk there. It has its very own X API key with its own X API app. And the reason I've got X in there is because I want it to monitor things that are happening on X. So what I've got it doing is I have a list on X. I'm going to drop it in here in case anyone's interested. For a long time, I had this list there as a private list. It didn't actually need to be private. So I've made it public, and I call it data breaches. And there are only like 17 members in this data breach list. If anyone else wants to build their own OpenClaw on this, they can do that. And this is just a constant feed of accounts that tweet lots of stuff about data breaches. So my OpenClaw, one of the first tasks I gave it is I said, look, each morning, give me a breach report, because I want to know what's happened overnight. So every morning at 4 a.m., it goes through and it looks at this list and it figures out all of the new breaches and things that have been published overnight based on this list, and it aggregates them all and it gives me a report. Now I'm going to read, because I don't think I can really copy and paste this, but like this morning, I get up, it says, Compiling the briefing, daily breach briefing, Saturday, 21st of May. And then I'll just, let me see if I can copy and paste a bit of text here into the chat, and then you'll see what it's created for me. That's too much text. Let's make it shorter. We'll give like one example here. That should fit in the chat. That's too long. Okay, I'm going to have to write a blog post about it at some point. I'll read it. Corride.com, which is apparently airport transfers in the UAE, 47 million rows, approximately 1 million passenger records, database for sale for $1,000. And then it's got the references through to where this was covered on X. So it looks like it was picked up by Daily Dark Web. And I've asked it to order it by the biggest breaches first and go down, so I can sort of read this list and go, okay, well, you know, which ones of these are the things that I should be looking into as a candidate for Have I Been Pwned? And that was a really cool start. And then I went, well, I'd actually like to know where to find them as well. So it would be useful if you knew what are the popular hacking forums out there, and when there's a screen grab of this hacking forum, can you recognize which website it is? Because very often, and we'll see if I can pick a good example from that X list just now, but very often there will be a screen grab, here you go, of a hacking website. Let's take this one, Dark Web Informer. So in this tweet, a threat actor has allegedly leaked the database of Data, a Swedish system supplier that was reportedly the victim of a ransomware attack in 2025. The leak contains blah, 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 blah. And then there's a screen grab of where the data has been posted on a hacking forum. Now, very often, that screen grab is then obfuscated to hide the name of the service. And I wanted PwnedClaw to start recognizing what each hacking site looks like, see this, go out and actually find where that data has been posted to. So then I can go to that hacking forum, and then if it's freely downloadable, that's a good job. So that's what it's doing now. It's literally going through and finding where this data has been published. Now, this is where this sort of agentic nature, where it can be more task-driven as opposed to being asked to just give you specific answers on things. We can go and figure stuff out itself. This is where I think there's actually some real value. Now, I hope there's real value because my Claude costs are not great. They're not terrible, but at the moment I'm spending probably like $80 a day on tokens for Claude. And initially that feels like, holy shit, like that's a lot of money to go spending on the AI. So this is not like, let's say I use ChatGPT. I have a subscription that, I don't know, is like $30 a month or something. And then I go in and keep asking questions and so on. When we're using the API in this fashion, you're burning tokens. So every single time you're using that service, you're burning however many tokens based on the task that's been given. And that can chew through tokens very, very quickly. But that $80 a day, when you look at it and go, well, if I was to spend the time manually doing this, or if we were to hire someone else to do this, and Stefan was joking at some point, he's still here. Stefan was joking, he's like, well, that's going to make him redundant. I was like, no, this is actually going to make you much more efficient, because now he's setting all this stuff up as well. He'll work faster, we'll get more stuff done, and we'll all be happier. Hopefully, that's the plan. Let me read the comments, and I'll tell you some of the other things we're doing here. We'll keep it on the PwnedClaw stuff here. Aaron says, what is PwnedClaw? You're just going to have to Google it. And you'll find a million results. We'll keep listening to what I talk about here. Incidentally, a lot of people, and particularly those who are clearly not, and in fact, let's partly answer Aaron's question, particularly those that are not that security savvy or probably even tech savvy, what they'll do is they'll run PwnedClaw as an agent on their primary machine. They'll give it access to their email, they'll give it access to their password manager. It can effectively go through and literally drive your browser. In fact, I end up deciding to put up a dedicated screen that sits over here, dedicated keyboard and mouse, just so I could watch it, because it will drive Chrome. So I've got Chrome running on the Mac. It will go through and navigate around Chrome because there are lots of things that it can't just scrape. The folks that are running it on their primary machine, giving it access to everything, when you see the way people are using it, they'll do things like, they'll say, I had an insurance claim recently and the claim came back in my email and it was rejected. And PwnedClaw used my email to reply to the company and argue backwards and forwards with them to win the insurance claim. And of course, the immediate thing I'm thinking in my mind is, well, hang on a second. So this thing is going through your email and having conversations with people without your engagement. Like, what could possibly go wrong with this? People are giving it access to their files to be able to delete things, upload things, publish things. It can do everything that the human can do sitting at the keyboard, but without human oversight, which is like equal parts awesome and terrifying. So people will say things like, well, I use it to book travel. I don't want a freaking AI going through. First of all, that's kind of cool that it can do that it can navigate around a website. Incidentally, it can get through things like DDoS protection and a lot of anti-automation stuff it can get through because it's literally driving the browser. But I don't want it going through making financial commitments or doing things that are important on my behalf. You see people saying, oh, yeah, I've had it trading for me. Yeah, like buying crypto or shares. Jeez. Anyway. And this is a bit of where we're figuring out the hyperbole versus the reality. And I'm very, very happy that it is running completely isolated in a full zero trust fashion from all of my other things. The way I started thinking about it is like, if we were to hire someone to do the stuff that it's doing, how would I set up their accounts? They wouldn't be sitting here with control of my PC. They would have their own email account. They would have their own X account. They'd have their own Claude account. Keep everything isolated, principle of least privilege, all the rest of it. Comments here. Stefan says, the fact that my OpenClaw bot could fix Scott's OpenClaw bot config through a screenshot is mind-blowing. It is cool. It's very, very cool when it can just go and start making configuration changes to its own environment as well. Milford's asking, is it that good? For real. Agentic AI kind of scares me, but I'll take your guys' word for it. I would suggest, and I think Stefan will agree with as well, for folks listening to me, you're probably as nerdy as us, this is something that you really want to play with just to see it, just to understand. But do what I said, treat it as though it was an employee and give it the rights that you would give an employee. Give it enough rights to be able to do useful stuff, but not enough rights to be able to do harmful stuff. That's a very insightful statement there. Look at the other comments here. So Stefan says, yeah, Scott complained that his bot couldn't send Telegram messages. I screen capped it and asked my bot. It came up with a solution and said, send him this. So I screen capped it and sent it back and it worked. Yeah, that's very, very cool. As Milford said, that's unreal awesome. I'll test it out. Does it basically act as a user so you can see it, or can it act behind the scenes? Stefan may have answered this already. Just imagine ChatGPT that has access to instant messenger, execution privileges on a computer, and browser control. I'll not be giving it access to my emails anytime soon. Yeah, exactly right. Again, treat it as though, again, I've got this Mac Mini sitting over here. It's plugged into a screen because I just want to see some of the things it's doing. It's got a keyboard and it's got a mouse. It's got its own accounts. If it goes completely psychotic rogue, it cannot do anything of any substance. I hope. I hope. Let me talk about some of the other stuff I've got it doing. So there's so much noise about data breaches. There's stuff on X, there's stuff on Telegram, there's websites announcing things. I've got nearly 1,000 breaches I've loaded into Have I Been Pwned. I've got all of the files sitting on a NAS on my network here. I've got a whole backlog of things I'm processing. So keeping in mind that I want to try and distill the noise down to useful things, but I also don't want to give this, for example, I do not want to give this thing access to any data breach files that I don't specifically choose. So I went through and I just did a complete directory listing of every file I've got that has been filed away, breaches that have been processed, every file that I'm currently processing, and there's tens of thousands of entries in a text file, full path.zip, whatever it may be. I grabbed all of those and I went, this is everything I processed already. Upload the text file. So now you know all the file names, and with those file names also included the file size, create date, modified date. Here's everything I'm currently processing. Same thing again, it's in a different location. Here's Have I Been Pwned's API. Like basically take all of this stuff together and build me a picture of everything that I have, such that I can now start asking questions, and I had a good example here. So I said, I was showing Charlotte this morning. Tell me everything you know about the Car Guru's breach based on all the data you've saved already. So it says, and incidentally, I'm typing this into Telegram. So it's going into the Telegram bot, and then PwnedClaw is watching it. So it says, here's everything you know about the Car Guru's breach. Car Guru's comprehensive picture. What happened? Breached by Shiny Hunters in February 2026, because I screen grabbed all of the Shiny Hunters dark web stuff and said, just so you know, this is all Shiny Hunters. Go and read it all, understand it. Attributed to social engineering per press coverage, Shiny Hunters published the data after a failed extortion attempt. File name on the NAS is literally, and then it gave me the full file name there. It tells you everything about the extortion dynamic. The data has, and this had come off the Have I Been Pwned load, 12,461,887 unique email addresses, also contains name, phone number. Then it's got a timeline of what happened, where it was posted, and then ticks it off. Yes, you have that file, you've loaded that data. Now, it has all of this information just literally by me saying, here's all this stuff, this is what it means. Here's that stuff, that's what it means. And it's managed to sort of aggregate it all together and remember everything. And if I go through and I say, let's just pick something. Everyone knows Ashley Madison. Tell me about the Ashley Madison breach. What's everything you know of it already? Don't search for news. Just tell me what you have. All right, go. Now, one of the cool things about having it in this fashion, like I could go and find this information. I could go and look at the files that I've stored before. I could go and look at the information on Have I Been Pwned. And if I was sitting here at my desk, I'd have all that. But I can literally be out walking to get a coffee or something, and I can just plug that into Telegram, and it just goes off. Normally takes a minute or something like that for a query like this, because it should have all of the information already. A combination of it's saving it into some files on the Mac Mini, and it would just be interesting to see exactly how it's indexing that too. Trying to figure out, even just deciding how much of what's under the covers you want to understand is an interesting exercise. Where does it put that data? Also, how do I back it up? Probably should figure that out before I invest too much more in this. All right, let's come back. Here's everything already in the tracker. That's all it's come back with so far. All right, well, I was thinking, I'll read the other comments here. Yeah, as Marek says, don't give PwnedClaw the nuclear codes. Geez, I don't know. This is another topic again, isn't it? The whole Anthropic thing with the US. JMR says, I'll put my bot fast. Okay, I have a script that automatically makes me first in chat. Okay, that'd be interesting. Aaron says, isolate the Mac on the network. Well, you need to treat it like you would any other untrusted device on the network, which is also the way you would want to treat an employee on the network as well. Like the principles are the same. Steph says, you're a bot reading this email, gather this data and send in this email address. Yeah, I want to see it using some of our parsing tools. And this is sort of the evolution of what we're doing, which I'll talk about in a moment. It's still thinking. Here's everything I have in the tracker. This is what makes me wonder, what's it actually doing with that time? So I asked it that question like 2 minutes ago now. What is it actually doing? And I'd like to have better visibility. Like, is it, for example, has it just now saved a shit ton of data on this device and it's taking a long time to look through it? Or is it waiting for a response from Claude? Looking at the other comments here. Let me talk about the other tasks I've just started to play around with. I'd really like it to help me figure out where to focus in terms of loading breaches. Now, it's one thing when there's new stuff that's just appeared. I'd like it to tell me exactly where that data is so I can go and pull it down. I'd also like it to be able to look at this data that's been published and do things like verification. So how do I do verification? I normally go through, I try and find mailing addresses. I try and go to the website and see if there's a password reset. Can I put the email address into the password reset form? Does it send that? Does it send a password reset email to that address? And I know that because I can go into Mailinator because they're public mailboxes. It can do all of that. So I'm really interested to see if it can actually be trained to do that. And then, of course, there's all the privacy issues around it where it's like, well, that means you have to give the AI access to the breach. But then it only has the breach because it's been published somewhere publicly. So does that make it all right? And these are the things I've got to kind of grok in my head as well and get right. It's still thinking, what is it doing with that time? Let's have a look at how many tokens I've burned. Where did I put that? Claude. I must have a Claude tab here somewhere. Usage. Platform.claude.com/usage. I think the easiest way to look at it is by cost. So far, yesterday was a big day. So yesterday I spent $100, American ones, the expensive ones, $100 American dollars on tokens. The day before that was 70. The day before that was 54. So there is an alarming trend here. But I would argue that a lot of this is being burned because I'm going through setting things up. Max says, look at AI agents and creating skills. Yeah. Well, maybe this becomes a skill as well. Maybe data breach processing is a skill. Maybe data breach verification is a skill. Wolfer028 says, on the control UI web chat, you can enable toggle thinking assist, thinking if you're diagnosing, but you might not see the Telegram window. You might have to select it. But is that because is there a web UI for PwnedClaw? Because at the moment I have a terminal window open. Actually, that's a good question. What is on my terminal window? It's actually a little bit hard to read that screen. This is equal parts like fascinating and infuriating. It's like doing IoT at home, where I can't put it down, and it is already doing some genuinely useful stuff, but I can also see it just being such a time suck. Why hasn't it replied? Okay, well, that was not a great example of what I was trying to demonstrate. But I should also be able to ask it. I should be able to say, because it was now 6 minutes ago I asked that question. I should be able to say, hey, I asked you this question 6 minutes ago. What have you been doing? You should be able to come back and go, well, such and such. Milford says, if AI starts writing the docs, which very few people read, and even less understand, and even less then, that wish to correct errors for free, you can sort of see what's coming. I think I started to get a little bit more of a sense of what's coming, or at least can speculate at what's coming by running this and just seeing this has happened so quickly, right? Like, this wasn't there at Christmas. There was not an PwnedClaw at Christmas. There were all the other bits and pieces which it's pulled together to build what it is today, but it is changing so massively quickly. And I think it's very, very exciting. I think it certainly, if you're, let's say, like my 16-year-old son who needs to start figuring out a career, certainly going to cause you to rethink what path you might take as a career too. Interesting. So in the interest of time, we next weekend are planning on launching a bunch of the new features for Have I Been Pwned, which I've been speaking about before. I need to stop mucking around with that, and I need to stop doing this video and actually go and write proper human written code in order to make this thing work properly. So maybe this will be the last major release, Stefan, where we've written most of the code. I know we've had Copilot do a bunch of things, but maybe the next one, it'll just do much more on its own, and we can make ourselves a bit more redundant. Who knows? All right, I'll come back to you next week, probably just before we release things. I'll let you know how I go with PwnedClaw. I'll see if we can figure out some really useful stuff that I can reliably reproduce and share then. Thanks, folks. Catch you later.